underground inside. I live at Harefield, which is in Freedom Pass land by a matter of a few hundred yards. Multicultural in that I also work for the Eastern region. Got an eye problem, so I don't like driving very far, perhaps 25, maximum of 30 miles from Harefield. Willing to travel further for day schools. I like working in the day, not the evening. I offer 4 daytime classes, which I'll tell you about briefly. They can be adapted for Saturday day schools. And the first, history of the London Underground, the things that brought about the building of the first underground. So that's really the growth of London from about 1800, coming of the horse bus, which caused it to grow even faster, coming of the mainline railways in 1836, which made the problems even greater, and then the coming of the first underground in 1863. And then there's ever such a lot to tell about the growth of the system, culminating in our most recent line in the last days of 1999. Talk about the trains, stations, track, signals, personalities, possibly a little bit about the future, which is never very certain. And in that class, and as far as possible all the others, we have practical demonstrations in the class. So the underground class, we build a tunnel. And there is a safety manual that the chosen person has to read first. London terminal stations, really stemming perhaps from the history of the underground, but a tale of far more unregulated growth, unstifled competition, some parliamentary control to try and stop some of the wasteful competition, but it didn't really work. So there's quite a tale of stations from 1836 right up to St Pancras International. As with the underground, we have a day trip looking at a few of the terminal stations. London Bridges and Tunnels, currently in its 7th week in Eastern region at Chorley Wood. Quite an interesting tale, bit of engineering, but it's not a course for engineers. And what is interesting is that the non-engineers seem to find it so interesting. We actually build a suspension bridge in the classroom, on which a very light volunteer will be asked to sit. But with the aid of a few lengths of terraline and a few stout sticks, you can, oh yes, and the polystyrene, building bridges and polystyrene. It brings home the principles. So when we go on that field trip, people could look at a bridge and say, yes, I know why they built it that way, and I know why the one before it fell down. So that attracts great interest. Most recent course, Mark and Isambard Brunel, which I subtitled Engineer Supreme. But when you get into the meat of it, you can really say, well, was Isambard really our greatest engineer? Because his triumphs, well, they were real belters of triumphs. But there are several things that people don't talk about as much. And they're interesting to hear about. Field trip again, restricted to London, looking at some of the Brunel remains around us. Some of